How are we doing, folks? Today is the 11th of July 2024.
2024.
Yeah, 2024, and then we just tilt this a little bit more so we get in the frame. Yeah, and 2024. So it's about 2 p.m. just after 2 p.m. here in London. We're in Finsbury Park in London, England, UK. So whichever part of the world you're watching us, whether you're in America, Canada, Africa, Caribbean, Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, how you doing? So Graham, what's on your mind today?
Well, unfortunately my ears are fairly blocked today because of this heavy cold. I've been quite ill, but I'm still, you know, want to do my best.
Your best.
But there's lots happening.
Okay, right. So we've just last week was the election.
Yeah, fantastic.
And
Right.
I can't believe it's a week. It's like almost it's like almost 3 weeks, almost a month, and it's just like 7 days really.
Yeah.
Last week we were here doing the election special. So
Yeah.
did your side win?
I think my side is made up of the Greens. I voted Green, of course. The Independents.
Okay.
And they've done very well against Labour. Labour has got a lot of seats and a huge supermajority, they call it, a big majority, which is good in a way because of getting rid of the bloody Conservative bastards who look like they're fucked for a long time. And they've sunk and they'll be sunk for a long time, which is wonderful. But another very interesting thing which isn't mentioned is the vote share wasn't especially high. In fact, Starmer's vote share wasn't more than Corbyn's. It was the same, if not slightly less, in mathematical terms. But of course, because of this first past the post system, they've got a huge number of seats.
And also the spoilers. We had many spoilers, including the Reform Party.
Oh, no, the Reform. Well, the Reform are basically the Tory party. They're planning to merge.
Right.
They are the Tory party.
And we had
The right wing of the Tory party.
Reform, and we had a lot of independents, and we
Mostly Gaza and people who are socialist, who are ex-Labour, who Starmer in his Stalinist purge got rid of.
and we had George Galloway, who lost the seat he had.
Goodbye Galloway. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm glad he mentioned Gaza, but everything else was bollocks. So goodbye. Goodbye that for charlatans.
So how many seats did the Greens get?
4.
All right.
They did very well. They only had one, Brighton Pavilion,
So if
which they kept. And now, Carla Denyer has got Bristol West. Bristol is a city number 5. It's the capital of the West Country, and she has and there's always been Labour. And she got rid of Thangham Debonair, front bencher. It's brilliant.
all right, so you got 4 from the Greens, you got 5 from the Independent. I haven't heard of the Independent being in coalition with each other, because everybody fought the Independent, fought it on the Gaza, on the problems we have in Gaza and the war in Gaza.
Well, you see, the Independents, whether they said it or not, would all be pro-Gaza. they were the people, the Labour loyalists.
And I mean, I haven't heard it officially that they said that they're a bloc, or whether they got together and they're talking, you know.
Well, they didn't have much time, did they? I mean, it's a sneaky. It's like what happened to Diane Abbott at the last minute. She could be an independent now, and she'd got a Jeremy Corbyn type majority. Now she's got a majority for the bastard Smarmy. Now she's got Smarmy's majority, but it isn't Smarmy's majority because everybody in East London, never mind Hackney, everybody out in Islington and everywhere else knows that she's her own person, and she's got an independent majority within the Labour Party.
And talking about Jeremy Corbyn.
She's an independent in the Labour Party.
Yeah. Talking about Jeremy Corbyn. Talking about
Hooray!
Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, Jeremy Corbyn.
He's this Park Borough's.
I admit I made a mistake. Look at Novara Media, and they were being very cautious with the polls, and they thought he was going to win. Well, they were wrong. I haven't seen that yet, but I bet you they'll be happy and surprised.
And this
Great.
And this is the problem with the media at the moment, right? The official media. They're very good at disinformation. And
Yes.
even though I'm pretty clued up in how to get the information, it is still very hard when the only official source for information, let's say like the Israel and Gaza thing, it's very hard when the official information only comes through about one channel, and that channel is biased 100%.
Yes.
And it's very
Of course.
difficult to figure out what is actually happening. I mean,
Of course it is.
right, so back to Jeremy Corbyn. So Jeremy Corbyn is the local, well, this park boroughs on to about 3 or 4 boroughs, and just over there it's his, literally it's his
Fiefdom.
yeah, it's his patch, Islington North, and he won that with about 8,000 majority. And even though
Who was the nobody?
he's still nobody.
I think the nobody, right, well, to make it even worse, right, was somebody who was actually an something like a private health company CEO.
Okay.
So I mean, basically, if the Corbyn
did he buy his
loyalists went
way
on
into
the
that?
doorsteps and mentioned that,
Yeah.
that would only been another nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
So not only was he a nobody, was parachuted in at the last minute, but he was worse than nobody.
Right, but I think it took something like about 12,000 votes. 12,000 votes, not votes. Yeah, in my technical. Yeah, and so if
Well, there are. That means 12. That means basically there are 12,000 customers for Specsavers.
well, this is this
Well
is
done, Specsavers.
this is true. Another analysis of the figures, they said Claire Starmer only got 60% of the votes. 60% of the voters actually came out to vote in this election. So that means 40. My thing is this: it means 40% of the electorate, or the people who could vote, didn't vote. Now, what were they thinking?
It was a very low vote share in general, very low,
right.
and that's a danger for democracy in general. And it's going down around the world actually.
So what?
Very bad.
Yeah. So
It
what?
was low in France too.
Yeah. So what was the 40% thinking, right? Were they shy conservative, which is like reform and what's his name? And they're racist, and all they're on about is the boat people, or are they the poverty-stricken people, right?
Look,
who-
I've got a friend, right? He loves Keir Starmer, but not with the enthusiasm that you or I would love Jeremy Corbyn. It's not a positive love. It's that I think I could use him as an example. He thinks, look, in this system, right? I hate the Tories. and therefore the only possible person who can win is Starmer. Now, I've not much enthusiasm for him, but he'll win and the Tories will be out, and I'll be relieved, like going to the toilet after 14 years and having a wonderful crap. You know, and you know, it's not greatly enthusiastic, but it's relieving. The thing is that I think a lot of people think like that because it's the way this first past the post system is. You know, look at the American system. It's more ridiculous than we have. At least we had other possibilities. In America, you've got two kings. You've got a duopoly of kingships. You've got the Democrat king and Republican king.
Right, so that 40% now, right? Now I'm still trying to figure out what were they thinking and how they were thinking. Are they so derived of poverty of choice and expectation and hope, or were they the Farage, Nigel Farage type of people who are
racist
and don't want to say it, you know?
I don't want to say it.
And is that
secret racists? Racists who don't have it tattooed on their skins? You mean?
Right.
You mean that you're everyday average racist, but when they're on a bus, right, and they can't get off, and somebody who's a bit dark-skinned or is a young with earrings and tattoos goes past them, they scream at them for deliberately having tried to push them over, and it goes on and on and on, and then you realise that it wasn't about actually pushing past them, and they didn't push past them. It was because really they don't want to say the language they'd like to. They would have used in the 1950s before the political correctness came along and stopped them. They would have given them an Enoch Powell blast, but now they can't. So they make up something else. But their attitude is just as nasty, and they'll take it to their graves. Those people, right, are not the majority anymore. They're dying out. But it's, you know, the Daily Mail and Sun readership is still quite strong, but I think lots of the problem is confusion and apathy, and I think the first past of the post system enhances that by saying, look, there was an anti-Tory vote even amongst the people that went for reform, and they might be the uneducated, so they are semi-racist, but it's not priority racist, but they think that by going to the right, it's the equivalent of people that we know going to the left. It could be.
But they got 5 seats in Parliament.
Yes, they got 5 seats. Yeah, but how long are they going to stay there? How long is Farage, right, going to stay in his beloved Clacton, looking after people, dealing with their benefit problems and their hospital problems and real things? I mean, the man wants to be in the U.S. Congress next to you know,
Trump.
King Trump. Why would he want to stay in Little Clacton? And that's the same with Anderson. Yes, he can win his seat, but is he going to deal with the problems of people in that area?
No, but
regardless of them being white, the fact is he's going to have to actually argue for them to have better housing and things like that. So it won't be long before people are disgruntled with them.
well,
It might even be a good thing that they've won, paradoxically, because now they have to take responsibility and show their true colours, in the way Corbyn's done for 40 years.
interesting.
Remember, they might be entertaining because of their Daily Mail racist, outrageous rants, right? Like saying that the rainbow flag is monstrous, or saying that migrants should all be left to die in the sea. It might be a nice little pub rant, you know, but 4 or 5 years of dealing with people's problems in the way that Diane Abbott does, in the way that
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, and the way I must admit that even some Starmerites do, who I might not like their politics, but they actually deal with the constituents' problems, and they were genuinely voted for. But these charlatans, well, let's see.
It is interesting.
Let's see.
And
When charlatans are exposed, it's different from hit and run, isn't it? They can't snipe anymore.
a good example is probably Boris Johnson. Oh, look who's come back from the grave. Tony Blair.
And he wants ID cards. Yes, he says there's problem with political correctness.
Wait a minute. So those policies.
He wants to fight Farage.
Yes.
By being more Farage than Farage.
So this is extreme right.
Yes. So Tony Blair's not a moderate at all, is he? He doesn't want to fight Farage from the moderate. He wants to be more right-wing than Suella Braverman.
So which means.
Which means he's a charlatan.
Which means he's
a war criminal.
He's attaining to the racist element
Yes.
of the British public, right? And the only
Well,
thing.
what did Starmer do when he shocked everyone by going to the Daily Telegraph or the Daily Mail or both and saying Thatcher's wonderful?
Yeah, he did.
So, and patriotism is good, and Brexit was a mistake. What he was basically, he pandered the soft racists up. He didn't get the hard racists.
In order to
Now that Blair wants the hard racists.
Yeah, in order to get into power, and now he's got into power. Well,
But look what happened to Macron when he tries to appease the racists. He actually helped Le Pen,
Well,
and it ended up doing Macron a great deal of harm, because he was started off as a liberal, right? But of course he's more anti-left than he is anti-right. He's more against the Front Populaire than he is the Front National. But it turns out that he's done himself lots of harm and no good, because he showed himself who he is. Charlatan.
have you looked at the makeup of the French Parliament?
It's almost equal, isn't it?
Yeah, and that means the National Front, or whatever they call themselves, right, has a major say in French politics.
But you see, in a way, Macron, people don't realise he's gone so far to the right anyway that there's not a big jump. He's enabled them.
All right, so
It wasn't a big jump from Macron actually started using FN sort of rhetoric, right, in the way that Sunak, Sunak started to do, right, together with Anderson, right, in the last year or two with his small boats. So he did his small boat business, right, and sort of more anti-Muslim there. But the thing is that having done that, right, he actually lost a lot of the core support who were either left of centre or genuinely liberal, and they have actually gone and they won't come back. So he threw them under the bus, right, to appeal to his right wing, like Sunak did by appealing to the Farages. But of course, he became a Faragist, appealing to the Farages. So then people said, let's have Farage. Farage is real, and Sunak is pretending to be Farage. And Le Pen was the real Le Pen, and Macron was pretending to be Le Pen. It doesn't work, and it's been a disaster.
well, 1/3 of the, at least as you say, 1/3.
And a poisonous disaster.
Right, the sort of National Front. Did you look at the French football team? Did you ever manage to look at the football match? Any other matches?
No, I don't look at football, but I heard what Kylian Mbappe said, who was well known.
Oh, what was he? One of the footballers?
World's top footballer, yes.
Yeah,
From Mali or something.
yeah. And
And he made yes. And he will he's genuinely working class. He will appeal to both black and white and brown and any other working class people, because he's genuinely working class.
Right. And
it was just like what the British football team did as well when they took the knee.
right. So
They stuffed the Tories.
right. So we have in the French football team, they have a high amount of black players, players from what they call it, North Africa, because that's the part that the French took over. You know, dependent territory. What do you call it? The French Empire, right?
Yeah.
But what worries me is that you got 1/3, which is National Front Le Pen. You got the next lot, which you say the president there, they are pretending to be. So it means 2/3 of the parliament is actually racist. If you're pretending to be Farage, you're pretending to be Pen, you've got the same policy and you've got a racist undertone. It's all about the foreigners. It's all about,
yes,
right?
that's unfortunately that has been always with us, and lately, due to the economic crisis between rich and poor, all the ruling classes have been playing nationalist and playing the which is a kind of racism.
And
Racist nationalism.
if we skip-
They've all been playing that.
if we skip back to England, so the first thing, Claire,
They've all been. No, everywhere is a housing crisis around the world, right? Because of privatisation, and not building, not taxing the rich and using that money to build council homes, which were very big in the 60s all around the world, post-war. But now they aren't being built, and people are waiting half their life for a secure little rabbit hole to live in, and it's fertile ground for people who unless they're rabid anti-racists on the far left, they're going to be maybe swayed by the racist argument.
see, they're waiting
Out of desperation.
if they're waiting half their life so far.
Yes, and they're going to think, well, the magic formula which is put to them is if they can take some of the sort of foreign people off the register, they may get a chance. That's desperation thinking. My friend has that. That's why he was very happy when Starmer won. But he doesn't seem to be very happy anymore, because deep down he knows that it won't be better for him in his hospital appointments. It won't be better for him in his pension. It won't be better for him in his rent. He knows that, and well, we'll see.
Well, at the end of those people's life who's been waiting half their life for housing, at the end of their life they'll get a nice little 6 by
Farage and Le Pen, let's be honest, and Trump will not build the council housing that people need. They won't do it.
well, I'll go on to the
Trump
economic.
was in 5 years. He did not help the poor.
Yeah,
He helped the rich.
I'll go to the economic.
But he never said that.
Yeah, I'll go to the economic thing a bit later on, right? But that's so when
Economics is at the heart of racism. The two things are inseparable. Racism is second to economics. If people can be as racist as they like, but it doesn't really come to the front of their mind when they have everything they want.
yeah,
It's at times like this when it's played to its fullest as a way of division.
so you're telling me that 2/3 of the people in France haven't got the things that they want?
Well, Le Pen wouldn't have stood a chance in the 1970s. Was marginal. Her father was marginal. Farage you'd be able to count him on your fingers.
followers, yeah.
So therefore, it shows that they're actually tapping on the desperation rather than the other way round.
A word that's been used by some of the political people right, is the ethnic minorities and the poor, right?
All poor. They always want, the far right always want to cut benefits, but they keep quiet about it while they're attacking immigrants. Because don't attack on two fronts. Keep quiet about it. Because you want poor white unemployed people, right, to attack migrants, right? Because they, deep down, they know they're going to be next, but they're just hoping magically that they won't be next. They're hoping they won't be, through desperation.
Well,
Because it's like if we were in a lifeboat, right, and it was sinking, and we were asked the question, which I think was part of a, I remember in sociology in my access course, the prisoner's dilemma, right? Who would you choose? So somebody would be asked to choose. There's three of us in a lifeboat, and they would ask for me or you, right? So they say, oh well, Graham's lighter skin, we'll have him. You see what I mean? But those people don't normally think throwing people out of a lifeboat. That isn't a natural way of thinking. That's a desperate way of thinking for people who've been deliberately put in a desperate situation and have been put in a horrible dilemma. And they're told this is naturalized. The dilemma that we live in is naturalized.
Yeah, yeah. So the poor and the ethnic minorities. So I've heard that from a political person, and it's not been said, and it's not been echoed in the rest of.
Remember, Irish used to be an ethnic minority. They were hated in Britain.
Remember the old jokes.
And so were Jewish, actually. They were hated too. So it's not just skin colour. Racism is all sorts of things. It's just basically bigotry towards a small outside group.
And which
it doesn't have to be race.
Which is a fantastic phenomenon when it comes to America's policies and Britain's policies in relation to Israel. Down on the streets, well, we've got government policies, but down on the streets we have some people purporting to be supporting Israel, right?
I haven't met many, but there probably are.
Right, and these would be the people on the far right purporting that they're supporting Israel. Have you come across that? They're defending the rights.
Yes,
of Israel.
I have met them. I have met them.
Is that sheep in wolf clothing or wolf in wolf clothing, or
sheep in wolf's clothing?
These are the people that stab you in the back. Yes,
but the sheep in wolf's clothing is a wolf. they of course those. But also, they're prey to the huge amount of Israeli propaganda. Remember, when Israel was first created, it was a socialist project, and I was pro-Israel. It would have kibbutzes. They were the persecuted people. Ben Gurion was a socialist in a certain funny sort of way. I didn't really understand the implications of it, but idealistically. But of course, it's flipped over the other way, as history does.
I've managed to come across a certain course on how to get what you want in life and what have you. And one of the things it says about powerful people, right, is that never declare your intentions. So you come in saying that you're going to be doing this, but really you're actually going to be doing the opposite. But you never, it's a strategy of war, it's a strategy of personal people in their personal relationship, it's a strategy of business, right? That the deception is, oh, a good one is the Italian. Now let me show you this. A good one is the Italian. You always see it in the movie when they say, Mario, oh, don't worry, you make a mistake, huh? Yeah. And he hugs him and he goes, oh, yeah, everything is all right. And as Mario walks away, he tells his henchmen, right?
Yeah.
And we forget politicians play that game. It's a game of power, right? In your personal life, your business life, your family life, even in your daily life, people play those games.
Well, why do you think that the the 1 year, the attack, there was an attack on migration for 1 year, followed by an attack on benefits. Benefits started off by Benefit Street. Then another year it was an attack on single parents. Then another year it was an attack on trans people.
I think we're still in the trans phase.
It's disappearing. We'll hear less of it. With the end of the Tories, I think that's going as well. Because as the more and more people talk about it, the more illogical it becomes.
All right, so again, the poor and the ethnic minorities, right, are in the kind of same group, but they're separated and made to fight against each other.
Yes.
Right? Now,
gladiator style.
Exactly. Now, all right, we'll go to the economics about the national health. Have you heard what recently they said about the National Health Service?
I suppose West Streeting, the big sneaky, probably was saying it on public that he wants to do deals with the doctors, which sounds great. And if he goes to, it is great. But I've got a feeling that, on the other hand, secretly, he's probably trying to make deals with private healthcare companies to actually take over, so that there won't be many jobs left for national health doctors. They'll probably have to go private anyway.
I've actually heard that. I've heard that.
So in front he'll do one thing, but in the back he'll do something else.
So for public consumption, there's this rhetoric, but privately and behind the scene, it's rather different. And in the recent news about the national health, they've talked about the people who call them out, who they have been ostracized and vilified for calling out the problem.
Union leaders?
No, the normal workers in the NHS.
Yeah.
Right. I did hear one report that said about seven of them committed suicide while they got suspended because they were trying to.
Oh, whistleblowing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. See, that's now come to light. So it seems like the whole National Health Service has been infected by some, I don't know, whatever disease behind the scenes. But meanwhile, we hear this rhetoric again. Actually, no, we haven't. It has stopped. Right? It came from Smarmy, Richie, right? That the economy have increased. Oh, we've put extra money into this. Oh, such and such we've taken out of the reality again. And
well, we know nothing is going to happen, because the trick will be the new rhetoric that's been made out about, which is the magic money tree language Mark III, which is costing. So because the rich are not going to be taxed, therefore there's no money to pay out because of costing. There's no money to pay out for housing because of costing. There's no money to pay out on social care because of costing, because of costs, right? So there's only two, to be honest, there's only higher taxation or cuts, right? So if they're so we know they're going to make cuts.
In almost every
cuts are coming.
In almost every podcast, didn't I say to you, the government cannot pay the bill, and the reason they cannot pay the bill
is because they won't tax the rich.
No, because they're lying to people
about not taxing the rich.
No, it's more simple than that, right? When they talk about inflation, oh, did you hear about the water?
Where does taxing the rich come in, or it doesn't?
You can carry on that conversation. I'm on a different conversation.
So where is this money going to come from?
First of all, they've got to start telling everybody the truth.
About what?
Every 10 years, prices double. What do they tell people? They tell people things are going to get cheaper. It never gets cheaper.
But they could have a prices board. like Harold Wilson did. He pegged inflation. He pegged wages and inflation. That's what Harold Wilson did.
Yeah.
They can do it.
We don't live in, unfortunately, we don't live in
He
Harold
was a
Wilson's
socialist.
time.
He pegged
Right.
inflation.
Right. And like France, and like the G7 countries.
But then he taxed the rich. Harold Wilson had very high rates of corporation tax on very rich people.
do you know
So
all,
he did get money from somewhere.
do you know all the 7?
Rich people have lots of money. Can you agree?
Yeah, but that doesn't resolve the situation that we're in. All the G7 countries have the same problem.
Because they don't tax their rich.
No. They lie to their people.
Yes, but on whose behalf?
The rich, yeah.
Right. And yes, but why would the rich need to have lies told about them?
No, not about them. About the situation that the poor people are in.
But why?
Because it increases their profits.
Well, let me simply explain what that major lie is, right? That is actually the ABC of capitalism.
Go on.
Redistribution of wealth. Wealth that has been accrued, a technical word for stolen, from the usurped from the poor over a long period of time and is held by the rich.
That's one example.
And that's what we are, that's the big lie.
That's one of the
That's
big
the
lies.
big lie.
There's many. Right.
Adolf Hitler did not tell German people that, look, millionaires, regardless of what religion or skin color they are, millionaires, right, who don't even live in Germany, who probably live in the Bahamas or live in the Caribbean or somewhere else, right, millionaires, right, who are running big Siemens and big multinationals and that, won't pay any tax, so therefore I've got to put a squeeze on you. But because but I've got a big trick. We can put a squeeze on this magic group of people who are ersatz millionaires, who are pretend millionaires, and we'll label them Jewish or we'll label them something else, even if they run a shoe shop.
All right.
Right?
So Hitler.
So there might be people living on some sort of benefit or something.
So Hitler took Germany to war. What
But
is?
he did not get rid of the millionaires. Nor did Mussolini, nor did Stalin.
And who funds the wars?
Millionaires.
Who invest in those companies? There's armament companies.
Millionaires. They don't invest everything though. They only invest a little bit. In fact, most of what they have is just sitting there,
All right. So if we go to
waiting to be taxed,
so if we go to Ukraine,
waiting to be redistributed.
yeah. If we go to Ukraine, what is Putin trying to do? The simplicity of war. He's just trying to gain more land.
He is right trying to tell poor Russian people, right, that he's not going to do anything about the multi-millionaires living in Switzerland or in Saint-Tropez, right, who can come and go and do what they like and probably speak English and French more than they do Russian, and might not have even set foot in Russia, right? The nomenclatura, the super rich, and what he's doing is he's saying, no, these people don't exist. We're all together, we all have the same ethnicity and religion and skin color, and we're fighting these people that used to be brothers of ours. We're fighting these horrible Ukrainian, like we did in Afghanistan, like we did in God knows where else, Poland or Kazakhstan or Chechnya or somewhere, and we're all together. We're all in this together, me and you. Me with my multi-million dacha, and you with your little hovel, right? You growing potatoes. We're together, and to show your patriotism to me, I'm going to send your children off to fight in a war, not for me, but for the great fatherland in the sky.
And who was the great beneficiary of the Iraq war?
The United States.
Well, not necessarily everybody in the United
No,
States.
no, it was
Who?
probably the Bush family, because they were big oil millionaires. I think there's lots of Texas oil companies that actually had plans to privatize as soon as the army set foot in the place, and they got the title deeds to those previously nationalized oil wells. The money was going to go straight into Miami, which it did, and it still is. And so the poor in Iraq are just
Are still
as poor, or if not poorer, than they were before the war.
Or the poor in Iraq are probably better off than the poor in America. The people who are sleeping under
That would be a big shock. Yeah, actually.
not a big shock. No,
would-
that is reality.
Look, I'm not surprised. I don't know the statistics, but it doesn't surprise me.
I'll tell you what the
It doesn't
difference.
surprise me at all.
I'll tell you what the difference.
all.
I'll tell you what the difference is. All right, you don't know much about America,
No.
but you see here, you see the homeless people here.
My friend told me something interesting. His brother took him to India in the winter for two months, right? And he always gives some money to beggars and that, so he kept a little spare change from that. Now, this was interesting because he'd never been. He'd been in Europe before. He'd never been into the third world country before, right? Just like me. So then he went to India. He saw the homeless in Calcutta. He says there aren't more homeless in Calcutta than there are in England. In London, there might even be a few more. They were in the same. Basically, they weren't any worse off, which was a big surprise. He said the people here don't know it. They assume that in Calcutta is known as a byword for terrible poverty, but people weren't much worse off than they were in Britain.
Okay,
What?
I'll tell you what the difference.
There we are.
No, I'll tell you what the difference is.
So, for what you're saying about homeless in Iraq and homeless in Texas, doesn't surprise me at all. There might be more American homeless than
No,
Iraqi
I tell you
homeless.
what the difference
And there
is.
might be more homeless in Britain than in Bengal.
Yeah, I'll tell you what the difference is. Right. So you've seen the homeless people here. In fact, our friend Ola, right? So you remember she talked about people sleeping on the beds on the street down there, right? The difference is here people are isolated, right? Nobody wants to speak to you. You actually.
Yeah.
The difference with Africa and some of those Middle East countries, and if we add the religion to it, right? Being a Muslim, there is a community and there is a village.
I don't like to talk about religion as a community, because I think people do things not because God tells them to do things, but because they do them.
All right, let's separate that then. Let's go to community, right? And family, right? And looking after people in your village, right? And being responsible. This is a religious thing here. Responsible for your brother man or your sister man, right? You're right. When you go into a village, indirectly,
Your biological sister, your sister with a vagina, and not a penis.
right? That is a big topic of conversation over in the West.
Okay,
Right.
carry on.
In the Middle East and in Africa, they just chop your head off.
Yes. Well, but your testicles are still left
Intact.
cooking.
Yeah.
Still left waving about in the
All
wind.
right. So as soon as you walk into a village, right, and probably in India as well, right, you become part of that village. Everybody knows who you are. You don't know who they are, but everybody knows that Patrick is now in the village. It goes around, and indirectly, when the village gets to know you, you become part of that village.
Yes, of course. There's more of a sense of community. I noticed that myself when I was hitchhiked around Europe. I went to North Africa and Turkey and Southern Europe. The poorer the people were, the more more generous they tended to become, because that was their social security.
And that's
But that's not a romantic.
no, that's real.
But it's real. But I'm not into the romanticism of poverty. So I'm not going to reify that.
I know that, right? But
That would happen everywhere. That happened in Ireland too.
it doesn't happen in England. It doesn't happen in America. Because
The ideology is very individualistic.
even the black one that says, I want to get rich or I will die trying. And he performed last year on that stage over there, 50 cents, right? Even right down to the poor people, right? That ideology, right?
Yes, but
That capitalist-
But please don't romanticize too much. Don't get too much into sentimentalism, because there are rich evangelical churches in Nigeria and South Africa that have huge cars, big money.
I know.
And there's the only thing African about them is their Union Jack tie.
Let me tell you-
Is there stars and stripes?
Let me tell you a
tie.
story.
These people take money, ask
From the
money from the
villages.
poorest.
The villages, yeah.
Yes, this is capitalist ideology.
Right. And here's the story.
Feudalism, right, is now infiltrated by capitalist ideology.
All right.
Feudal ideology is virtually dead and buried.
All right. Now that situation there,
Feudal
the
ideology.
villagers give in to the church, and in fact they haven't got enough money to pay for their children's education or to pay for food, but they give it to the church, right? The church, there's a sermon that says 10%.
10%, yes.
All of the churches,
I think the Muslims call it zakat.
all right,
10%, yeah.
Okay.
Giving alms, or the church, even the Protestant church, they call it the alms to the poor.
and there's a thing called the
Charity.
Yeah, there's a thing called tithes. which-
Teas, yes.
Right.
teas.
So if you,
medieval teas, taxes.
right, if you
Teas
be,
were taxes.
all right. So if you belong to the church,
You
you
give a teeth.
you guarantee the church 10%
10%, yes. Yeah.
of your wage.
It's a duty.
Yeah,
It's both a legal and a moral duty.
yeah. And the more poor you are, or
It's
uneducated,
ecclesiastical law.
yeah. The more poor you are, the more uneducated, the more unwise you are, you will follow, right? And in
Because you want to go to heaven. It's followed up by the idea of going to heaven and cementing your place in heaven. Because if you live a very awful life and you give generously either to the church or your fellows, right? This will cement your place in heaven.
and we come back to the poor and the ethic.
Maybe going on crusades, maybe spending 4 years on a crusader ship might also cement your place in heaven. All sorts of things will cement your place in heaven. But this is one of the, I think, good things from the feudal period. The teeths were a good thing. And in fact, modern taxation, right, which capitalists are always against, is a leftover from the medieval times when we had something called the just price. It wasn't possible to actually it wasn't possible in the medieval times, even in Europe, right, to actually overcharge. It wasn't allowed by canonical law, right? You weren't allowed to do it. They had I read this book on economics, medieval economics, which I got when I was in the University of East London, right? And the feudal period it's difficult to understand. It's very different from the capitalist period. And one very interesting thing, which I think was kept over, kept by socialists, right, was the idea that made socialism and religion all quite similar, was the idea of charity. And this came from the just price. The capitalists got rid of the idea of the just price.
Well, yeah, and if we come back to up to today, okay, a good example of where you could pay anything for anything is in an auction house,
Yes.
where people pay silly money for silly things.
Yeah, silly things. Yeah. I think it's funny how Napoleon's pistol went for something like God knows how many millions of euros. That could have really, right, solved the housing crisis in one of their cities.
Right.
And what, just one, Toulouse maybe, or I don't know, Lyon, one of the smaller cities, but by those 2 pistols from Napoleon.
And this is what Mrs. Thatcher called the free market.
And you can get pistols, you can find flintlock pistols in museums all around the world. But these were Napoleon's pistols.
And this is what you call the free market, where you can charge any price
Yeah.
for anything.
In
Right.
fact, in Das, I remember reading in Das Kapital, Marx talked about the change from commodities exchange for other commodities, barter system,
Yeah.
to an early money system where commodities were exchanged through money for other commodities at a roughly similar rate. But late capitalism, right, where money has been reified and freed from the commodity itself, so the money has become more important than the commodity.
Yeah.
So you can have exchanges like they in the market that don't have any commodities at all, which confuses everybody.
Right. And who are the masters of that? The 1% with their money and their investments,
Yeah,
which is constantly growing. When they say,
stock market.
you're right. Now,
The stock market never existed in the medieval times.
look, when you hear the stock market rises in prices, right? Be fearful, because if they say copper has gone up by how much per ton, be very fearful. If they say coffee has gone up, right, by X amount per ton, be very fearful. All right, let's stick to the coffee and the raw material,
Raw materials, yeah.
right?
Primary.
All right, let's take
Primary
coffee.
goods.
Let's take coffee. So when coffee goes up in price on the stock market, when it's been sold down to the supermarket, let's say the manufacturers, right? Do you think it's the same price as before?
No.
It's gone up.
Yes.
When the manufacturer puts it in the jar and puts a label on it and sells it to the supermarket, do they sell it at the same price?
Of course not. Of course not. They're in business to make a profit. That's what they say.
Right, so it goes up.
It goes up because the middle people take their cut.
Right.
In fact, all the parasites in the middle of the chain take their cut, and so the price just raises and raises and raises.
So when you're at the supermarket now or the corner shop, you buy that product now, coffee. It could be any other product. It could be bananas,
Yeah.
wheat, potatoes. It's gone up in price. You
of
bought
course.
it at a price that's gone up.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to your customers? You're going to have to increase your price.
Yes.
And that's why we have at the moment a cost of living crisis,
Yes, of course.
right? You could almost see the chain of events.
Yes. No. This is what you've said is something interesting. The reason we're having a program like this is to try to help educate some people, right, that might know that something's wrong, but might not really understand, right, the kind of things we're talking about, economics. They might say, oh, it's a load of rubbish, oh, it's too much for me, it's all, oh, I don't know, it's a rubbish, oh, it's this, and they all say this and that, and that. Oh, my head hurts. No, actually, actually we're demystifying this, right? We're demystifying it.
We're demystifying the big lie.
The big lie. Yes, the big lie. Capitalism is based on a big lie.
Well,
Profit, number one, let's explain. Profit is not necessary. Profit is a choice. It's not a necessity. There's nothing in human nature, right, that is aimed towards profit.
Greed.
Human nature
Greed
is aimed towards survival,
greed.
right? A person's right wants to some shelter, right? Because
Fundamentals.
unlike lions and tigers, they can't sleep out in the rain without being ill or in the snow. right? So they build shelters, right? They might have a genetic component that makes them want to build them. It might be survival. It might have even later a social component to build towns and cities and that, to build shelters which grow into towns. But it's not. There's no genetic component to actually having to owning
10 houses.
5,000 houses,
Yeah.
which they can't see.
And you can only live in one at a time.
Yes, and even a multi-millionaire, right, gains no satisfaction from the amount of property which they own. It's an ideology which they believe in, that like a religion. Capitalism is like a religion, which the capitalist, the idea that a person who owns that property believes they must have more and more property. They're not getting satisfaction from the property, they're getting satisfaction from the property they own, right? Maybe if they had a helicopter and they went and saw all the crops that they own, they might get some temporary satisfaction out of that. But really, the zeros on paper are actually more of a fanatical ideology than they are of a satisfaction, because that it makes no sense at all. That is what I feel that you're talking about as the big lie.
It's part of it, right? But that chain of events,
And it's now come all the way down to the bottom. Even the homeless person on the park bench will actually believe that making a profit and competing is a good thing.
all right. Last time I said to you,
And I've met very poor people who say, no, we don't want a Labour government because they will tax the rich and make them run away. And it's like, and if they run away, will you actually not have a park bench to sleep on? Yeah, I suppose so. Oh, so you're only a few centimeters away from the floor anyway. So what you're going to lose by a multi-millionaire trying to blackmail people saying they're going to leave?
all right. Now here's a trick of the state, and the trick of the Western world. You go to the shop, the coffee has gone up, right? You can't afford the coffee and all the other food, right? It's gone up in price. So what has the Western government done is a thing called a food bank,
Because it's not his work. Again,
right?
it's not
You get free food, right? Now, so you forget about the price in the shop. The price has gone up. While you're at the food bank, maybe 6 months, a year, or what have you, the price actually has gone up again in the shop. The reason why you couldn't shop is because the money you had, but you got free food. The government deliberately gives you free food. The government,
They don't want a revolution like 1917. They have to. They say they don't like welfare, but even the most right-wing people, except for maybe some who are really psychotic, right? But most of them actually know that to have a rich civilized society, right, they actually have to give the poor a little something.
there's more people, that 40% who didn't vote, I believe, is in the poor bracket, right?
Yes,
So they've been subsidized artificially.
yes.
Meanwhile, the people who invested in the stock market in the first place, their money keeps on going up.
But they're also being subsidized. So rich people are subsidized more than poor.
Tell me.
Well, what happened during the banking crisis? Weren't the banks subsidized?
Yeah, it's a good question. What happened to the people who lost their money?
Well, some of them went to the wall, but a lot of them were actually given other jobs and other positions, were looked after. Rich people are not really allowed to fall on their feet. We're not. Look, I'm not going to find any ex-millionaires sleeping
not
in
fall
the
on their
bushes.
feet, fall on their faces, but the government helped them fall on their feet.
Yes, of course. So really, we're in a tautological, we're in a truism, a tautological argument which goes round and round.
Right, but you're now realizing how it works.
Yes, rich people you see, no one talks about the subsidies to the rich.
Well,
The rich are, socialism is, or it does exist for rich people.
what was it
Not
called?
for poor.
What was it called during the lockdown? What did they give the
the
business?
furlough.
Yeah, and you could apply for the furlough if you was a business. All right, back to the subsidy.
So maybe the bigger businesses got bigger furlough.
They did.
So somebody who was
And
rich, but you see, the ideology of Adam Smith, which they like to talk about, is that in constant competitions, that you allow some companies to go to the war that are not profitable or efficient. They call it efficiency. Because they're not efficiency, they go broke. And this is, they call it social Darwinism. They say that the survival of the fittest.
Do you know what?
That's not true.
That statement
It
there.
isn't survival of the fittest.
That statement there.
It's here
And
in the
back.
park. This is survival of the
Yeah,
fittest.
that statement there about efficiency, I would say it's a holy bollocks.
In fact, for the rich
Right.
people, it's survival of the fattest.
Right. And I know all,
Survival of the fattest.
yeah, and I know all the
The
components.
fattiest.
Yeah, I know. And I know all the components in relation to that business thing, right? But back to the subsidy of the person who went to the shop and they cannot pay. So you go to the food bank. But if you go into the food bank for
Well, when I was in in northern Italy, in northern Europe, right, where I went to some homeless places, and they give you some food, and it's state from the state.
Yeah.
In southern Europe, where they didn't have that, you just stepped outside. But I remember in southern Italy going to the back of the church
Yeah.
and be given some food, and in Spain too. They give some alms. So you go to the Catholic church, right, and you line up, and they give you some food.
is the church part of the state?
Yes, but people don't think it is.
The chessboard. Anyway, so
Yes.
back to the subsidy. So the person has gone to the food bank or to church. In fact, a lot of the churches are food banks.
Yes,
As well.
yes, of course.
Yeah, but they don't preach religion when you come to collect the food.
Well, one of the best off charities in Britain is the Rotary Club, owned by the Conservative Party. In fact, I knew somebody, right, some elderly person who was when I was in my 20s, right, and homeless, and he said something amazing to me. He said, don't go down to a jumble sale. You just find rubbish there, right? You might be lucky, but the jumble sale you want to go to is the Rotary Club. Go to a Conservative Party charity because they've got very good stuff. So that taught me everything I needed to know about capitalism. He didn't talk about capitalism, but it was like listening to the Ragged Trousers philanthropist where he was talking.
All right, back to the subsidy of the person and the food. Right now, when you, so it'd be a year or two, but the prices you couldn't afford in the first place has actually gone up again because that
Yeah.
year you've been going to the food bank. Right. So the original reason you couldn't afford the food, right, is still there. What hopefully ever happened, you've got a job paying an average wage, right, so you can pay now for the food in the shop.
Well,
Right.
I think the main problem with everybody is rent. I think rent eats everything.
Right. And one of the things that the government did for some people, when you bought a new house, it was a few years back, what do you call it? There's a tax you pay. There was a tax that you normally pay to the government when you buy a new house. That was dropped for a few years, right? So in order to stimulate,
Wasn't that Thatcher that she wanted to, because she knew if people owned their own houses and cars, they would be little Tories, the private property owners.
Right.
So they would help people to get on the housing market and get them into debt.
right now,
And make them Tories by getting them into debt, because they would be so happy that they own some property and they would feel morally superior to people who lived in hovels or lived collectively in council housing or in tents.
Okay, and what was the offer to the people in council housing? Can you remember? What was the offer? There was a reduction. There was 2/3 reduction.
Yes.
Right?
Sweetener,
Right.
bribe.
It's not that. You see,
Yeah.
the government indirectly of all the economic, it's a
I remember there was a lot of bitterness at the time of Thatcher in her, I think, her second term, because I might have been wrong, but I think it was the second term, because when she brought in this council house thing, she made a huge division, which has remained up to the present time amongst the working class. Those who bought their council houses became Tories overnight, and those who remained, who either didn't buy or couldn't afford to buy, and continued in council housing, which became ever more dilapidated, right? And that's what Owen Jones wrote his book Chavs on the people that were left behind, who were living in the council houses that they either wanted to live in because it was collective, or had to live in because they couldn't afford to actually buy them, which was actually very large. But the minority who did buy that became Tories overnight.
right. So what
They probably make up the Daily Mail readership,
all right.
really.
So 2 cases there. They did not reduce the price of the food, right? They decided to subsidize you in order to get the food, right?
Yeah.
If you went to a certain thing, they will give you a coupon or what have
Coupon,
you,
yes.
or you will go to the food bank. They never reduced. With the houses, they didn't reduce the price of the houses. They gave you 1/3 off or 2/3 off or what have
Yeah.
you, right? Because they know you couldn't pay the full amount.
No, but you'd always be a prisoner then. Would be in debt bondage, like the sharecroppers in the USA.
Do you-
After slavery was abolished, you would be in debt,
Do you, know
and so you'd be a semi-slave.
do you know what mortgage means?
Debt bondage.
And morgue,
Is mortgage more death?
something like
mortgage-
that. Somebody explained it to me. It's-
Mortgage,
it's-
debt,
it-
more debt. A French word for death. More.
Yeah, yeah.
The more.
Mortgage, a morgue, right? The etymology of it, right? So yeah, but yeah. So the food is not reduced in price, right? So those who have fallen can get subsidized by the government, but the price is still the same. The house thing still the same. And the last one in this example is the ULED zone. It's not Khan. It was on the books. and-
Boris Johnson, wasn't it?
yeah, and
And in fact, what makes all this hypocrisy about this far right political right ranting, GB News and all that, is because the things they were most criticising was actually Johnson's policies.
Yeah.
Which
And-
he said it wasn't. He actually, I remember, he stole the policies from Ken Livingstone
Yeah.
after he beat him, right? And he pretended they were his.
Yeah.
So he jumped on that bandwagon. They were very popular, but the Evening Standard is what got rid of Livingstone, and they criticised him. They did it all. They Corbynised him.
Yeah.
And even worse, he was gone. He was the first Corbynised human being. He was not Corbyn.
Yeah.
He was Corbynised,
Yeah.
not carbonised, or with the sash basis.
But it's-
Anyway, the thing is, Johnson is in London. Then he built all these cycle tracks, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a brilliant thing, right? But it would have been, but it was part of the of this London transport thing, which was going to be buses and bicycle tracks, bicycle
under Ken Livingstone.
loops and what have you, bicycle pathways, and that his plans, were taken away. And Johnson, right, became Mr. Eco-friendly, right? So it was part of his populism. But then he went against the things that he'd built, right? Because he saw the wind blowing in another direction. Once he became once he was at that time a liberal. He was a liberal Tory when he was running London. Then, after Brexit, he decided to switch over from being overnight from being to be on the far right. He was going to be UKIP.
Did you remember when he was going to lie?
Going to be Winston. He was going to be Winston anti-woke.
Wasn't he going to lie in front of a bulldozer?
Yes.
When they were going to build
the
extra
runway
airport?
at the Heathrow Airport extension. Yes.
Yeah. And what happened to that?
Well, he found all sorts of reasons not to, and on the day of the vote, which was which the Tories pushed through, right, and part of the government that he was in, right, he went off to Afghanistan for the day. He disappeared. He did his disappearing trip.
Afghanistan was safer than being in London.
Well, and safer than a fridge because you can open the door. Fridge, yeah.
All right, okay. You see, all right, we're gonna.
He was. Yeah.
We're gonna start concluding because I've only got one system running today, and if that fails, then that's it. Right, but you see,
for one day, he only went for one day.
Yeah, the day he was meant to lie under the bulldozer.
Under the bulldozer,
yeah.
Right.
All right.
But he is a brave man. Imagine, like there's many members of the royal family that have flown helicopters in a film studio, right? Just like Top Gun, they were meant to be flying to Afghanistan, right, risking their life. Well, Johnson wanted some of that action, so he went for one day to risk his life in the Metropole Hotel in Kabul. I don't think he'd go now.
Right.
No.
So still back to subsidizing the poor, right, with the food, right? Now, it's part of an economic system, and the problem is the economic system. And the big lie, which we get into, and you kind of begin to understand how it works. So when you get that job, you go back. Oh yeah, we went on to ULEZ. So they subsidized. Oh, the thing about ULEZ was this: was that Khan said that in order to get a new ULEZ car, he would give you a grant. So it's not that he asked for the prices of the car to actually go down. He would give you the money in order for you to afford the car.
Yeah.
Right. So the prices still stay the same. Right. So in all the situations, the houses, the prices has gone up. The food, the prices has gone up.
I think he was thinking about the long-term benefit, because at that time the environmentalism was very popular. It became, in the era of populism, it became unpopular in the anti-green era. But before that, it was quite popular, even amongst liberal Tories, even among liberal Republicans.
All right. So
because of the environmental crisis, became known about.
Right. So those three things, right? The prices have never gone down. So what has the government done in order to help the individual? It's actually given you the money in order for you to just about get it, right? And for you to just about carry on. Maybe you got a small business, and maybe your business has improved so much from that subsidy.
Hang on, has Uxbridge? You know when the Tories won that Uxbridge seat?
Is that Boris' seat?
Has it gone? Is it gone now?
I don't know.
I think it has.
Is that
I think
Boris's
Uxbridge
seat,
is probably now Labour. That's Boris's seat. Yeah, he was very happy that they won his seat, and suddenly Sunak went on his anti-green rant.
Right.
But which Susan Hall fell out of the aeroplane with.
Now, on another time, I'll tell you how they use this green thing to put third world countries in a headlock, right? But back to the headlock that the poor and the minorities in this country, right? So it's good that we separate them, right? And they cross mingle, because we got ethnic minority who are poor, we got ethnic minority like Sunak, who are very rich. Extremely rich, but he suffers some of that. So
but during the South African government, there were some Africans who were called honorary whites. like Mr. Buthelezi, he was in the tricameral parliament.
Are those days still happening?
Yes, it's called Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman and Kwasi Kwarteng and Kemi Badenoch.
That's
Is it?
interesting. Yeah, that is interesting.
Who knows? Le Pen might have some African and Arab people.
They have in their party. They have.
I'm sure they all have because we've moved on from the 1945.
No, because they never disclose their true direction. They give you a dummy, right? They give you a dummy.
Yes, but I tell you what, right? Some lunatic who hadn't been trained properly, right, was volunteering to go around Clapton to work for Farage, right? Who they said they didn't vet, but really they just didn't expect that he'd be caught on camera, and he just said he made a racist rant about Sunak's Hinduism, and being an idiot, he didn't know where India was, so he told him to go back to Pakiland, which is the language which every reformist, every reformer would have loved, but they had to pretend that they didn't like him.
And that's exactly.
But the thing is, they gave it away, and Sunak had to pretend he was surprised and hurt, and he pretended he was very hurt and very surprised that there was a fellow Tory, right, or a fellow reformer, right, like Ian Anderson, who was both a Tory and a reformer, so reformer Tory, who Sunak actually praised day in, day out, right, would actually really think that his skin colour was not good for the British ruling class. Oh, well, I was surprised.
Right.
Oh, and he got a bit of toilet water and put it running down his cheeks, and said he's never been so upset.
And
what he was really crying about was the fact that he knew that he'd lose the election.
Yeah.
And he'd have to go back to banking.
So that lie and those lies has been
and that probably in the future, no, they'd probably the lunatics would take over the Tory Reform Party,
I think
and they'd probably never have a Sunak again. Just think about it. In America, why can't Kamala Harris take over from Biden? They're saying she's not very good and stuff like that, but really, it's just racism and sexism. They just want
find different ways of
they
expressing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
How come, if Trump is a racist fascist, right? How come they can't have Kamala Harris, right, being against him? She was a lawyer. She was a very successful prosecutor lawyer. So she knows what she's doing. So therefore, she could actually be she's young, and she could actually be a person against Trump, and because it's a democracy, even if she lost, she'd have a fair chance of settling against him. But I think they're more scared that Kamala Harris, I think the ruling class, even the ones that don't like Trump, are more scared of Kamala Harris than they are of Trump. Which means your sheep in wolf's clothing, or wolf in sheep's clothing, actually turns out to be correct.
Right. Now Graham. Right. Now Graham, listen to this. So in
fact, she might even get rid of all the abortion laws.
Right. So my little birds, or my news, are telling me that they're changing, and there's more pressure now on our man in America to step down, and Camilla, and they're saying from where I'm standing, or where I'm sitting, or where I'm getting you, they're saying she's most likely to be the person to take our man's place, right?
Well, why we can lend her Suella Braverman. She can be against Trump.
But look at pause there. Look at this.
They could share a condom together.
Look at Claire. Look at our man who's running the Labour Party and Prime Minister. What was his job? Lawyer, CPS.
For public prosecution, yeah.
CPS, oh yeah.
CPS, yeah.
What do you say Camilla's job was?
Prosecutor.
It's possible. Give it a year's time. In America and in Britain, we got two people who were part of, I'm not going to say law enforcement, but part of the lawyers and legal system,
yeah.
right? And it's highly possible we're going to have two people on both sides.
Yeah, but unless, I mean, but I think there's a superficial difference between Keir Starmer and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to strain your brain and think what that superficial difference could be. It's hard.
I pass. Go on.
Well, it could be melanin,
One's black and one's white.
and it could be the shape of their body.
A woman. Listen, India used to be run by a dynasty before the current. Oh, what were they called? Gandhis, right? Was it the women or the men and the men and the women? The whole dynasty, right?
Yeah, you see, but you see, sexism and racism are not actually natural things. They're created things. But the thing is, they've actually trained people quite well, and a lot of people, right?
You mean to train them quite well to hide it? Hide their...
No, they've trained them quite well to believe in these silly things. A lot of people believe this. The fact that that Obama did win, right, means that Kamala Harris could win. But why do they think that she couldn't win against Trump? Why do they think so?
This is where the innate and the hidden and the sheep, sorry, the wolf. The wolf is coming out. They try very hard to hide it.
In fact, I heard on the BBC World Service that the stock market in France, they call it La Bourse, right, were more scared of a far left victory, which did have, than a far right one.
Yeah, it's strange.
It's funny. They were saying publicly that they were worried about a far right one, but in reality, they were more scared of a far left one because they knew that the far left would start nationalising things and making rich people pay tax. The far right would
making
do that.
rich people poor.
Rich people poor. Well,
you know that's the most thing they're frightened about.
Do without breakfast.
You know when the stock market crashed in the 30s, right? It was the rich people that was jumping off the buildings.
Yes, but that's not because they became poor. That's because their ego was inflated. Their ego was destroyed. You see, for a rich person
to be poor,
to not have a helicopter and to have to drive in a car is like for a poor person to lose their flat and to have to sleep in the bushes. It's the same. It's a bigger drop. It's very painful. I mean, if Sunak had to give up his helicopter and go in a chauffeur-driven limousine, he'd feel ill.
Did you see the
Imagine Prince Charles, or King Charles, right, having to actually put toothpaste on his own toothbrush. Wow, painful. Pain, cruelty.
All right. Let's think to conclude. You see, I still haven't answered the question about the subsidy and the big line.
Yeah, okay. Carry on.
That will take a long time.
Okay,
right?
I want to hear it.
No.
So I want to hear some of it.
All right, but basically, the house price, the car price, the food price never goes down. The government will subsidize you, right? During lockdown, the companies got furloughed.
Yeah.
Right? It's part of that economic system which the government is lying. It's simple as this. Every 10 years, the price is double.
Double, yes, of course.
For all the section of the organs of state, when they say they increase money, if they increase the money by 2%, right? It's actually not. It's not actually increasing. All right, they increase the money by 2%, which is meant to be inflation, right? The average. But here's what: other things go up at different rates, right? Certain things will go up by like 50%. Other things will go up like for rent is an example, right? An individual, right? An individual rent goes up by like some people's individual rent. You tell me, give me a figure.
From £800 a week to 1,200
All right, so that would be what percentage increase?
per month. Let's say
That's like 1/3.
1/3. Okay,
That's 30%,
20%.
right? So the individual, your cost as an individual goes up by 30%,
Yeah,
and other prices go up.
yeah.
The cost of running a vehicle, the price of a new vehicle, it's not. It doesn't go up by 2%. It goes up to like something like 30%,
Yeah.
right? And running the vehicle, right? So that's why some company opt out for leasing the vehicle now, rather than actually buying the vehicle.
Yes.
Right? So the vehicle for your company goes up by 30%. Your rent goes up by 30%,
30%.
right?
Yep.
Your council tax, other
Yep.
services, electricity.
Yep.
What is the water price going to go up by? Have you heard the recent?
Oh, it's going to a lot. It's going to be very big. Yeah.
Like 50% or something.
People are going to be very angry, especially now after the election. They'll be angrier now than before because they were magically thinking that somehow that nothing would get worse. They thought after the election, when the Tory lost, right, that they wouldn't get life is as bad as it can ever be, and it won't get any worse.
It'd get worse.
And now with the water going up, they're going to be very upset. And there's nobody that Keir Starmer can blame
So why does the government can never pay the bills?
because water is actually both a private company and a monopoly. It's a private monopoly.
It is.
It isn't the free market, but it is capitalism. It's capitalism, but not the free market.
Yeah.
It's private. It's a private monopoly.
There you go. Right. So we just explained there's
And
two-
people must have water.
Yeah.
Must.
Yeah. It's like
Must have water.
they're holding the gun to you.
Exactly.
Right. So we got 3 things. Oh, 4 things, including the water.
Yeah.
Right.
I've got my gun over here.
Right. So in general, things go up by about 30%. So the government's going to give you what, 2% increase, and also the government before it
It
gives
won't be able to pay the water bills. Will take everything. People will be selling their cars. Even the anti-ULEZ people will sell their cars to pay the water bill. Actually, the water bills will actually be a bigger cost than food and electricity. Imagine that.
I don't have to imagine that. I know that. That's why the government.
Britain's one of the few countries in the world that has a private water company. In fact, private water companies in Britain own private water companies in Colombia and Peru.
All right.
And it's killing the people there. These private water companies. Thames Water owns private companies in third world countries.
We can't pay our bills. The government is lying to us all the time because the government can't pay the bills. The government says it will give you 2% rise, right? And it wants you to reduce.
But do they need to pay bills?
Who?
Because the government is the government.
All right.
Do they need to pay bills?
Yeah, they do. They need to pay. They need to give money to the hospitals in order to pay wages, right? To buy machinery, to buy drugs, right? To maintain and run the hospital buildings. To pay the electricity bill.
but that's socialism. That's what Corbyn was talking about. If they have more austerity and they meaning more cuts, if they don't actually give anything to the hospitals or the schools or public services in general, if they give don't give anything to the public services for the next 5 years and keep things exactly as the Tories left them, right? Then they've actually costed, in their own terms, they've costed everything. Things will have remained the same, but
No.
people will have become poorer. People will become poorer and more ill, and they'll die on waiting lists.
All right, now that
And there'll be more homeless. But at the same time, right, the only thing they'll have to build more is prisons, because there'll be more crime. But apart from building more prisons and having more law and order, which they'll have to pay for because there'll be more crime, because there'll be more poverty, nothing else matters. They can give nothing. They can give nothing to the NHS or social care.
he hasn't got a number plate on that, has he?
Yeah, I think things will remain the same for the next 4 years.
Yeah, he hasn't got a number plate on that, has he?
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Forget it. What do you?
No, he can't drive that on the road. He can only drive in a
It
private.
doesn't matter. Anyway,
That's the 1%, the rich,
Okay.
and
yeah.
he's showing off.
Showing off. Yeah.
And if you take that away from him, he'll jump off of the thing.
Well, let's do it. Okay. Anyway,
Right,
you see what I mean? I
take
think
that.
nothing's going to happen in the next 4 years. I think nothing is going to happen. I think nobody will be. I think nothing that we call progressive will happen.
All right, we're gonna.
We'll see. Let's wait and see.
We're gonna leave
Leave it at that.
it at that.
Okay.
So,
and from
yeah.
me,
Goodbye.
and from you,
him.
goodbye.